Welcome to the Detroit Lions News Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Chap. We are going to be talking about all things Detroit Lions here on this podcast today. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about with OTAs and all that jazz. It's just a great time. But obviously, we know that there will not be a mandatory mini camp for the Detroit Lions because they are playing a little bit earlier this year in mandatory mini camp. We'll talk about all that. We'll talk about the new coordinators at the helm. I got thoughts on them. I did a background into them, looked into all the things that they do right, all the things that they do wrong, and what they want as a philosophy for their offense and their defense. And then we'll talk about position battles heating up that we can go into the training camp looking at. There's a lot of battles on the offensive line, safety. There's battles everywhere for the Detroit Lions. So it's a good time for the Detroit Lions. And to be honest, it's going to be a fun preseason because unlike in years past, there are position battles to win and there are starting jobs to win, especially at guard. We'll talk about that. And then in segment 3, we'll talk about player comebacks like Hutchinson coming back and progressions. Obviously, I think Jameson Williams is going to have a huge year with Johnny Morton at the helm. I'll get into the reason why I think John Morton is going to be a good thing for Mr. Jameson Williams. And we'll talk about DJ Reader and his Super Bowl aspirations, emphasizing the team's collective goal. And then we'll look ahead to spring training camp and all that stuff for the Detroit Lions because that will be coming quicker than usual because of the Hall of Fame game. It's going to be an interesting time. But before I start, you just have to understand two things about this is with the Detroit Lions, there's two things. In this podcast. One, this podcast will start. This podcast we'll be having another podcast. It'll be called Kings of the Corner. Kings, something about talking. The Three Kings podcast. They're gonna be talking sports cards, collectibles, all that jazz. So if you're into that stuff, we'll post a link on the page for you to get that as well. As always, if you miss any portion of the show, you could see it live on YouTube. There will be a YouTube channel specifically dedicated to the Detroit Lions News podcast relatively soon. And then you can go on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts on the Detroit Lions News podcast. But let's start. Obviously, a lot of people are making a big deal about John Morton taking over for Ben Johnson, Kelvin Shepard taking over for AG. And a lot of people, they make these broad assumptions like the coordinator don't matter. The coordinator absolutely does matter to a point. To a point. When you are the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, there's two things that are quite different from other teams. The first thing is when you are the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, you are basically you're racing a Ferrari and you just have to know how to drive it. And if you know how to drive it, you'll be perfectly fine. If you can't drive it, it'll be a beautiful crash. That's the way this thing goes. But the way I look at it with Johnny Morton, and that's where we'll start. Johnny Morton. I think Johnny Morton's going to be a damn good offensive coordinator. And I wanted to highlight him because, guys like Breeze, guys like Sean Payton have spoke out about Johnny Morton, about how good of a guy he is. So these are his philosophies for Johnny Morton. It's his offensive philosophy is sound decision making, and when you talk about sound decision making, you talk about a guy like Jared Goff. A guy like Jared Goff is going to be a sound decision maker. He's not going to take some mitigated risks that could end up in an interception, could end up in a pick six. I think early on in Goff's career, he was taking those chances, especially when he first got here. Dan Campbell and the coaching staff got him to a point where he didn't have to do that. He just had to make the right play. And sometimes making the right play is making a sound decision. And I think that fits well with what John Morton really wants. He wants explosive plays and excelling on third downs. Now, this is an explosive offense. Like I said, coming into this podcast, when you talk about explosive plays, you talk about this offense. I mean, let's just be quite clear with it. This offense is explosive. They're ready to go. They're a tough group. And if you could just drive the car, you're going to be in for a good time. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, he was on the field for 45% of the plays, and he had 20 touchdowns. 20 touchdowns on the field for 45% of the plays. Can you only imagine if he had 55, 60%? James Williams, St. Brown, Laporta, Tim Patrick, David Montgomery. There's so many good tools that you could use as a guy to make explosive plays. It's not just James Williams. It's not just Jahmyr Gibbs. St. Brown can make an explosive play. His elite route running in the middle can get you 50, 60 yards. And that's an explosive play in Johnny Morton's offense. Because when we talk about Johnny Morton, his big play is 16 plus yards. His run is plus 11 yards. If you would have went back to last year and you would have talked about the big plays, if in Johnny Morton's offense, you would have had 115 big plays, which is going to win you a lot of football games. Because when you talk about being a big play team, a lot of teams can't really do that. They don't have the speed. They don't have the wide receivers. They don't have the tight ends. Some don't have the running backs. Some don't have the offensive linemen. The only team I think that can really match the Detroit Lions' big play alert is the Philadelphia Eagles, and maybe the Commanders and the Chiefs and the Bills, and just those teams alone, they could really make it happen. But Johnny Morton believes in explosive plays. He believes in making some big plays, and that's what he does. So when you talk about explosive plays, when you talk about big plays, that is what Johnny Morton likes to do. When Sean Payton was asked about Johnny Morton, he had this to say about Johnny. And Johnny was with him last year in Denver. He said he's a super passionate and he works his tail off, Payton said of Morton, who was his pass game coordinator for the Broncos last season with Bo Nix in his rookie year. He's great with film study and ideas, and he's one of these guys that will bring you red zone, third down, a lot of information. Look, it's going to be a lot easier going to a quarterback like Jared Goff than it was to go with a rookie quarterback. We all know when you come into this league in the NFL, you always come into this league and a rookie quarterback usually tends to struggle. Thankfully for Bo Nix in Denver, he had a great offensive mind in Sean Payton. He had a guy he could trust in John Morton for the pass game coordinator, and they made things happen. Bo Nix is a talented player. It's easy. It should be easy enough to get it out of him. But when you're dealing with a rookie quarterback, it's not entirely the easiest thing to mitigate. So there's that. And Drew Brees had something to say on Johnny Morton as well. He said, "I'm excited for him and the opportunity he has. He's been around some great play callers throughout his career, guys like Norv Turner in Oakland, John Gruden, and of course Sean Payton. And just to name a few, my experiences with Johnny have been great, especially over the last 2 years when I came back to New Orleans. I thought he brought a lot of great ideas and a kind of presence with the coaching staff and contributed a lot. I wish him well." When you have a guy like Drew Brees say what he's saying about Johnny Morton, it's very rare that you get a guy like Johnny Morton to come into a Saints organization that was already pre-built. We know who ran the offense with the New Orleans Saints. It was Sean Payton. And when Sean Payton, gave him a little bit of, credit to what he's been able to do, and he made him his pass game coordinator in Denver, and Drew Brees is giving him love because he's obviously a good coach. You don't just give a shitty coach good praise. A lot of people make this about Ben Johnson, right? Everywhere you hear people, you say they say you're gonna miss Ben Johnson. You're gonna miss Ben Johnson, and you might miss pieces of Ben Johnson, but you might get a coach that really fits Jared Goff even more. I think there was times last year where Ben Johnson got a little cute with the way that he called the game. It's not a fault to him, but when you have an offense like you do in Detroit, you can make some cute calls and see if they work. And One call in particular that I wasn't really a fan of was the delay on third down against the Green Bay Packers. Fourth down. It was a delay, and he went. I think it was a third down or fourth down. It was a third down. They ran a halfback delay to the right behind Penei Sewell. I felt like it gave the defense too much, time to react to the play moving that way. And obviously, they know when there's a play to be made, it's going to happen on Penei Sewell's side. So look, I think Johnny Morton's going to look at all that, and I think he's going to look at all that and go, okay, let's make things happen. Like, let's make things happen. And that's the way I look at it with Johnny Morton. I think Johnny Morton's going to be a damn good coach here for the Detroit Lions. I think Johnny Morton has done a damn good job throughout his career. I don't care what he did with the Jets because, honestly, the Jets are just a total trash bin. But if there was a coordinator that I was really bummed to lose, it was Aaron Glenn. I think Ben Johnson can be replaced. I think that a guy like Dan Campbell, that's his offense. You've seen when he fired Anthony Lynn, it's the same offense that they ran against Pittsburgh. It just has more talent. The Lions just have more talent right now than they did back in when Campbell was calling plays after they fired Lynn. So that's what you got to know about that. But for the meantime, I think Johnny Morton's going to really bode well with Detroit. I think he's gonna mesh well with Goff. And when we talk about guys like Jared Goff, why is he gonna mesh well with a guy like Johnny Morton? Well, Johnny Morton, he loves to do a couple things that Jared Goff loves to use. He loves to use play action. That's the first thing he knows. He loves to use play action. And when you use play action, Jared Goff, he's been pretty damn good, and he plays right up to Jared Goff's strengths. So that's what I would look at right there with that. Also, with Dan Campbell said something. He said he was one of the pivotal pieces of helping us when we put this together for this offensive version for Jared Goff. Campbell said so that was big, and then also, there are many things that during that game plan and weeks of game plan, that ideas he had in the past game going into weeks, getting ready for opponents was big for us. A lot of things we use, man. And I think that Jared Goff is really going to love having a guy like Johnny Morton as the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. This is good for Detroit in a multitude of ways. He's obviously worked well with Goff before. So it's not like Goff has to learn a new guy in Johnny Morton. But the outlook for the 2025 season, in my opinion, is his previous experience as a play caller. That's my concern. And the challenge of maintaining the Lions' high-powered offense. It's easy to look from the sideline and say, I could drive that car. But it's a lot harder to say, I'm going to drive that car with that amount of speed. Driving a Ferrari is not easy. Not everyone could drive a Ferrari. But for Johnny Morton, he's just got to learn how to drive it. There will be bumps in the first couple weeks, but I believe that Johnny Morton will do a damn good job in this year one with the Detroit Lions. Let's talk about Kelvin Shepherd. So, look, I think when you look at Kelvin Shepherd and the way that he has coached throughout his career, he's been a great linebackers coach. I think that when you look at Kelvin Shepherd, you look at the development of a guy like Jack Campbell. You look at a guy like Alex Anzalone, who has gotten a ton better under Kelvin Shepherd. You look at guys like Zeke Turner. Look at the linebackers they had come in last year, late in the year, that were just throw-ins. A guy like Zeke Turner who made a huge play against Green Bay. Look, Kelvin Shepherd doesn't have any experience as a DC. And it's interesting because I think Aaron Glenn is going to be the harder guy to replace in terms of the coordinators. I love Ben Johnson. I love Aaron Glenn as coordinators. I feel like Aaron Glenn is going to be the tougher to replace because of what he could do as a as a guy that could lead a defense. Last year was not easy for any defensive coordinator to come in here and coach this team to win 15 games, win the number one overall seed. And then you're talking about a defense that is decimated by injuries. They had seven of their seven of their original front seven were injured. They had 9 they started with at the end of the preseason. 7 of them got hurt at some point in the season. And, guys like Mekhi Wingo were looking good, gone. Ali McNeil, gone. Aiden Hutchinson, obviously gone. Derek Barnes, gone. Malcolm Rodriguez, gone. You'll never see a better coaching performance from a guy like Aaron Glenn, who, let's be honest, a lot of Lions fans were not happy with Aaron Glenn throughout his entire career as the defensive coordinator with the Detroit Lions. But one thing you did know about Aaron Glenn was he was going to have the team ready to play. And even though the talent didn't match what the offensive talent is on the field, you saw the defense play to a level where they could help Detroit win. Detroit was going to have to score points because the defense was not firing on all cylinders. When you're missing half your guys, you're missing half your pass rush. You're missing your star defensive end in Aiden Hutchinson. You're missing your defensive end, your defensive tackle, and Lee McNeil late in the year. Missing guys like Barnes and Rodrigo, and you're kind of throwing guys in there. I mean, at the end of the year, I remember the Packers game. My cousin comes to me. He says, "Who's this guy?" Ezekiel Turner. I didn't know who Ezekiel Turner was either. I mean, I looked him up and I figured out who he was. But when you're in the moment, you go, Quan Alexander, I remember him 10 years ago. Jamal Adams, I remember him 10 years ago as a safety. They're playing linebacker in that game. And it just goes to show you how great of a job that Mr. Aaron Glenn did for the Detroit Lions. So when we look at Kelvin Shepherd, it's very easy to see this is his coaching philosophy. And when you look at the coaching philosophy that Kelvin Shepherd has, it's effort, unity, and relentless. And those are things that I think Aaron Glenn had the same thing, unity, effort, and relentless. But when you're a coach, there's defensive guys that are always going to back defensive guys. And I think that when Steve Spagnuolo said this, I took a little more credence into what Kelvin Shepherd is going to be, because you listen to Kelvin Shepherd and you say he's a leader of men. He played in the locker room. He played in the NFL. He knows what it's about. He knows how to get these guys hyped and fired up. And Steve Spagnuolo said something that makes complete sense. Spags on Shepherd, to me, Kelvin Shepherd will be a head coach in this league, in my opinion. And look, I love Steve Spagnuolo. I truly do. I think he's one of the best defensive coordinators in the entire NFL. Obviously, when you win the Super Bowls that he has won as a defensive coordinator, it's a pretty good barometer of how good of a defensive coordinator you are. But Steve Spagnuolo is a genius, and he's always been a genius. And if there's one thing that I could hope Kelvin Shepherd uses from a Steve Spagnuolo defense, it's the blitzing. Like the blitzing, the exotic blitzes. If you could use some of those into your packages with the defensive talent that this team has, oh boy, that'll be very, very nice for the Detroit Lions. And Aaron Glenn, he was also a guy who said something great about Shepherd. He said he's tough, he's gritty, he understands the ball from a number of different perspectives. I just totally have a lot of confidence in that man, and I think he's going to do a hell of a job. Replacing a guy like Aaron Glenn, who I think a lot of Lions fans totally dismissed. Aaron Glenn was a guy who got the raw end of the deal because he didn't have the defensive talent that the offense has. He just didn't. Like, you look at the offense and you go, Goff is a top 10 quarterback. Gibbs and Montgomery, they're great. The offensive line, great. Wide receivers, St. Brown, J-Mo, Tim Patrick. A couple years ago, Josh Reynolds, Laporta. Those are great weapons to have. But with the defense, I felt like it was always lacking, right? You didn't have the corners until last year, and you were still starting a rookie cornerback. We were waiting on Jack Campbell to develop. We were waiting on Aiden Hutchinson to hit the next gear. Lee McNeil has his best year ever, and he gets hurt. Glenn didn't really get to see the end of the road with what this defense could really be. And I feel like that's a disservice to him. But Shepard emphasizes unity and relentless effort, stating, "This is one unit, and we're going to move as one in everything we do. Absolutely relentless effort, non-negotiable." He sets high standards, insisting on accountability and precision. As linebacker Zeke Turner noted, the minimal room for error in Shepard's system. Shepard credits mentors like Don Capers, who was on this. He was a senior assistant on this Detroit Lions team in 2020. His coaching approach, focusing on building a defense characterized by toughness and tenacity. Shepard has been instrumental in developing linebackers like Alex Anzalone, Melvin Rodriguez, Jack Campbell, contributing to the defense resilience even amid injuries. His influence extends to new players like Ahmed Hassan, who earning his trust through dedication, aligning with Shepard's emphasis on effort and cohesion. And when you look at the 2025 season, what this Kelvin Shepard guy is going to have to do, he's going to have to come into a job in his first go around and really nail it. He's going to have to really nail it. Kelvin Shepard's going to have to be really good. And a lot of people are going to always harp on the defense because we know the offense is going to go, 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 go. But I think the defense can be special. I think Hutchinson is going to come back stronger than ever. I think Lee McNeil, when he comes back, is going to be really, really good still. And I look at a guy like Tyliek Williams. I think Tyliek Williams is going to be one of the better players that we drafted, especially in his first year. So we'll see where that goes. But that is the coaching breakdown. Obviously, when you talk about the coaches, you talk about Kelvin Shepard, you talk about a guy like Johnny Morton. These are guys who are going to be instrumental in building this team in the right realm. And I think Johnny Morton is more than capable. I think that Kelvin Shepard is more than capable. And I think that this team is going to go to a higher setting here coming up here soon. So let's go to the next segment as we talk more Detroit Lions football. Look, this is going to be just an absolute, if you're talking about what this team has in front of them, it's going to be nuts. Because when we talk about the position battles, when we talk about potentially, trying to get to it right now, but when we talk about the position battles, and we talk about guys like offensive line, you got safety, the last safety. That's going to be interesting. The Detroit Free Press did an article. It's from Dave Burkett. It says Detroit Lions open OTAs as position battles loom. There's one spot, got to go earn it. And, that right there is from safeties coach Jeff O'Neill. Now, Jeff O'Neill, he was talking about, where is it? I don't know where it is. A safeties coach, Jeff O'Neill, said to the media, he says, "We got 5 young, unproven, hungry guys that there's one spot." He said, "Go earn it." And it's exciting to see these guys compete. And obviously in the OTAs, then the training camp practices, and they'll get the bulk of the work throughout the 4 preseason games. So we're waiting for one of them to pop. Hopefully 2 or 3 of them pop, and we end up in a great situation. So right then and there, the safety coach is like, "Look, you got one spot. There's one opportunity. go make the best of it. You're going to get the snaps. You're going to be able to do what you want to do, but go make the best of it. And that's what he says. Now, Hank Fraley has a similar thing. Hank Fraley says, I on the offensive line competition, I know this, and I think I've always learned it from my father coaching me in the little leagues, all the way up through going to high school, to college, and then having an opportunity to play at this level. Competition brings out the best of you, the best of a unit. Fraley said it will weed out the weak too. So the guys that just can't keep up, and talking with all our guys this year, there's a lot of opportunity for everyone. And, in the article, Dave Burkett, he talks about right and left guard being up for positions that could be positional battles. Now, I don't think Glasgow is in any danger, even with his bad year that he had last year, of losing his position. But I think that how bad his year was last year, it's always a possibility for him to lose his job. Christian Mahogany is there, and as Dave Burgett points out in his article, Glasgow, Mahogany, and second-round pick Tate Ralledge are the most likely candidates to start Week 1. Fifth-round choice Miles Frazier, holdover Coyote Ashike also push their way into the mix. However it shakes out, offensive line City wants our best 5 on the field. So what I love about this Detroit Lions team is, and I love it from Hank Fraley, he said, let's get our best 5 on the field. Like, you don't have to be a guy out there that's like, oh, we got 3 starters that are penciled in. We obviously know Sewell is penciled in. We obviously know right now Decker is penciled in. But there's 2 spots up for grabs. Who's going to take them? And basically the way Fraley said is, if you don't perform, we will replace you. That's what he said. And, this is just the way it goes with this guy. I think that there's tons of opportunity for the offensive line. A guy like Tate Ralledge, I think, could potentially start this year. I love the pick from Georgia. I thought he was a great player, and especially his name, Tate Ratledge. Sounds like a total scumbag. And we heard Mahogany get called a dirtbag. So you have scumbag and dirtbag on the same line. I'll take that any day of the week. Okay. Your offensive line has to be good. Your offensive line is going to protect Jared Goff. And if they can protect Jared Goff, it don't really effing matter who is the guards, because at the end of the day, you're gonna have Sewell as your tackle, you're gonna have your center as Ragnow, and you're gonna have your tackle as Decker, and that's what you got to look at right there. So good for them. Dave Burkett also mentions the backup quarterback. We'll get to that later in the podcast. I got some thoughts on that, but it's just it's gonna be an interesting thing right there, the backup quarterback position. He puts number 4 safety, as we point out. Jeff O'Neill says 5. He was talking about the 5 young, unproven, hungry guys that are competing for the number 4 safety job. He mentions Dan Jackson was a special teams player at Georgia. This is a surest path to winning a roster spot this summer. Though O'Neill says he values versatility in position and wants to see all 5 of his players do better on man coverage, on slot receivers. Beyond Jackson, Lauren Strickland, who did play pretty well through a couple games, who made the team as an undrafted rookie at a training camp last year, but played sparingly in the regular season. Maurice Norris, Eric Hallett, and undrafted free agent Ian Kennedy are also in the mix for the job. Kennedy was entering athletic traits, has enticing athletic traits, and it had an impressive showing at the Lions' local day workout. He crushed, O'Neill said. I mean, not just a DB coaches, special teams coordinator Dave Phipp ended up gravitating over it. Dan Campbell ended up gravitating towards over it and said, "Who is this kid?" And we went back and watched some of the tape, and some of the stuff we saw at the local day was showing up. Physical, could run, obviously could track the ball. That's about that's about Ian Kennedy. Ian Kennedy played at Keenly. Keenly played at Grand Valley State, so he's a pretty good player. Just undervalued. They said they're so impressed with him. He's a little bit of a blunder right now mentally because of how much defense we've thrown at him, and he's used to coming from Grand Valley. But we're in the position drills. You could see the athletic ability. You could see him track the ball. So he's got a great development player for us right now. I hope that develops into a damn good player for us here in 2025 and beyond. So that is one. Another positional battle. The Lions got a ton of positional battles. Like I said, when you're coming into this year, we're gonna be talking about the positional battles, and a guy like this is another one. The number 3 tight end. The Lions played the third most snaps with 2 tight ends of any team in the NFL, according to Summer Sports, and ranked ninth in 3 tight end formations. They have 2 reliable tight ends on the roster, and Sam Laporta and Brock Wright, but a little proven depth in backup. Shane Jusher caught 1 pass in his reverse role last year, and is probably the best receiving threat of the 4 players competing for the number 3 job. The Lions signed a blocking tight end, Kenny Yeboah, in free agency, and 2 undrafted rookies on their roster in Luke Deal and Zach Hurton. Both Deal and Hurton were known for their block prowess in college, so the Lions may profile that in the profile and then the backup. Either way, that position won't be decided until late in training camp. So as we go forward through OTAs, go forward through the Hall of Fame game, we're going to learn more about the number 3 tight end position and what the Detroit Lions want, what Johnny Morton wants. That's what's going to be the most there. So the position battles are all over the place. There's going to be a lot of competition at the Lions OTAs, Lions training camp. A lot of competition. That competition is always good. When you talk about competition brings the best out of everyone. When you're doing competition with anyone, it could be video games, it could be blogging, vlogging, podcasts, whatever the case may be. Competition brings the best out of everyone. Period. End of story. And that brings us to our next story about Hutch. Now, this is about positional comebacks and breakouts and all that jazz and progressions and stuff like that. So, but first, let's hit the comments. We got a couple comments here. Good morning to you. The big question is, do Detroit Lions win Super Bowl? This is a year, yeah. Danny says on the Facebook, probably not with the schedule this year. If you're the best, tough schedule shouldn't stop you. It's harder to get there. They'll be close last year, and if it don't get harder, hopefully future plans on for players, staff won't interfere with focus on games at hand. Morton already called breakout season for JMO, so I'm all for it. We'll get to that in a minute. I'd like to see how Morton and Gibbs use Montgomery on the field together. Jason says, coaches sound great, and I'm sure they'll nail it. Jason also says, the players need to be super fit before the season starts. Excellent conditioning. Only position which has always concerned my as QB. We got similar ways that we think about this. So, come back in the best to come. So when there's a lot of things that you're going to see this time. So Hutch said some stuff coming back about potentially about coming back and being grateful. We'll get to that in a minute. But Hutch is going to be Hutch. I don't think there's any problems with Hutch coming back. Hutch is going to be Hutch. Like he's a very forward-thinking person, a very positive person. He's going to put his best foot forward. He might be a little rusty for a couple games, but I think he'll get his feet under him and he'll start off pretty well. But his mindset is crucial. When you come back from an injury like that, it's very hard to come into the league and hope and be as positive as he's been through his process. So he said It feels like I'm being back to myself again, Hutchinson said Thursday as the Lions wrapped up phase 2 of their NFL offseason schedule. This is the biggest hiatus I've had without playing ball, so I'm pumped. And then he said he's grateful. This was awesome. This is what Hutch is. Hutch says, I don't think anybody in the game of football will ever be as grateful as me. When I come back into the first game, that said Hutchinson, grinning, that's what it's all about. It's just a comeback. I mean, I'm back, but just being able to do what I love again on the biggest stage, that's what sets my heart on fire. When you talk about a guy who a lot of people have had a magnifying glass on this guy since he came in the league. They just have. He came from Michigan. A lot of people have eyes on him. A lot of people think about him in a myriad of several ways, and he's just came into the league and done damn good. And up until late in the year, he was still leading the league in pressures. It's unbelievable what that kid's been able to do. And it's funny to me because I look at a guy like Hutch and I go, when people doubt him, I say, why? Like, how do you doubt a guy like Aiden Hutchinson? Like, I truly just want to understand it. Because when I look at a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, and there's a whole myriad of reasons why people could doubt him because of the injury, because of how serious the injury is. Those are things that you can doubt from him. But in my opinion, having a guy like Hutchinson is the most important thing. He has the mindset. He's not going to be afraid. He's going to come back and do his thing, right? We know that. But the thing that is getting questioned is, should the Detroit Lions give him a contract extension right now? And I hear a lot of people saying, wait till you see him on the field. Wait till you see him on the field. That's bullshit. Because when you talk about a guy like Hutchinson, and you talk about guys around the league who are going to be getting contract extensions at the edge position, we know what Hutchinson is going to be. A lot of people could have those theories where they're like, oh my God, this guy, he's coming off a major leg injury and he might not be the same. I would say this. Hutchinson had a clean break, which most doctors will tell you is probably the best thing for him. That it was a clean break and not like a one that was sawed off or something like that. But what I like about Hutchinson, and the reason I'm so comfortable in paying him, is his mindset. Coming into the year, you can come into the year and you can talk about a myriad of things, right? You can come into this year and you could be critical. You can kind of like question, is Hutch going to be the same player? Is he? Is Hutch going to be the same player? And there's people that are like, wait to sign him to a long-term deal. Wait to sign him to a contract. Why would I wait? Why would I wait to sign a guy that I know is going to be good? Every one of these long-term extensions could be a total albatross by the end of it. Signing Kirby Joseph to an extension could be an albatross. You never know. You're one play away from it and from anything ending, right? And this guy coming off an injury, his mindset's in the right way. But look, I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait till Parsons gets his deal, or TJ Watt gets his deal, or Trey Hendrickson gets his deal. Let's just do it now and get it out of the way, because this guy is going to get the maximum money. You tell from the comments that he has, you can tell from anything that he's been able to do, he's going to be a really damn good player for years to come. And I'm not going to just sit here and say, oh, well, guys, I just want to see how he does. I wish sports worked like that. I wish life worked like that. Sometimes in life, you have to take risk. You have to take a risk. It's either you take a risk or you lose money. And if you're okay with losing money, fine. That's cool with me. But I'd rather take the risk on Hutchinson because I know what he's about. I know what he's about. And I like the way Hutchinson's mindset is, I think he's coming into his own. I think the injury is only going to put him to the top, and he's going to get better and better as we go on. But he's going to be fine. I can guarantee you that he's going to be fine. So would I pay Hutchinson before all these guys get paid that are going to be needing to get contracts? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I know what Hutchinson's going to be. And I know there's a lot of people that are kind of scared to pay Hutchinson because of he's coming off the injury and all that jazz. Whatever. He'll be all right. But that's my thing on Hutch. So let's get to the next one. The next one is on Jamison Williams. Johnny Morton is going to come into his offense. He wants explosive plays. He wants all that jazz. I look at a guy like Jamison Williams. I think this could be his best year coming. Last year, he had 58 receptions, 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns, yards after catch, 17.3. He had a drop percentage of 2.2%, which was the lowest in his career. And when you talk about a guy like Jamison Williams, right, a lot of people talk about J-Mo. They go, oh, J-Mo. A lot of people called him a bust early on. I remember that. That was a funny time because you kind of saw what this kid was going to be. Once he grew up a little bit, once he matured a little bit, you knew he was going to be a good player. But the way I look at a guy like Jamison Williams, I don't think he's reached the apex of what he can actually do. I think a guy like Johnny Morton, who loves to use play action in his game, that's great. I think Johnny Morton really could bring the best out of Jamison Williams. And, I'm not going to sit here and say Jamison Williams is going to have this huge, huge year. But if I had to put money on it, I would put money on Jamison Williams having a huge year. Just the way this offense and the way that his philosophical philosophy is with Johnny Morton. We'll go back to it. His offensive philosophy is sound decision-making, explosive plays, and excelling on third down. Now, if there's one player that I would love to throw the ball to on third down, it's St. Brown or J-Mo. And if I wanted to do explosive play at the same time, it's St. Brown, it's J-Mo. Let's just be honest. And it brings up a very interesting conversation going forward about Jamison Williams. And are you going to extend him and all that jazz? Probably. You probably will. But it'll be interesting what happens moving on. But it'll be very, very interesting for the Detroit Lions perspective. And we'll see what happens with that. Because I think J-Mo can be a very damn good player. I really do. I think J-Mo is going to be a very, very talented player. I think he's going to have his best year, in my opinion. So that is what it is. All right. Let's get to what DJ Reader said, because I think this is an important part too. So DJ Reader said to the media a couple days ago, he said, I've had a really good career. I've had a really, really good career, Reader said. I've been blessed and fortunate to play for a long time, played good ball, played in the Super Bowl, had a good game, just hadn't won it. And so that's really all that matters to me, is just winning one, whatever way and whatever part of the team I could be and whatever help I could do for this team to help win one. That's my main focus. And, man, you love having guys on your roster that just all they want is a championship. You want a championship dynamic with your team. You want a championship dynamic with the way you play ball. You want a championship dynamic with the way that your players play, the defensive leadership. And having a defensive leader like DJ Reader and Alex Anzalone and maybe Zadarius Smith soon will be good for this team in terms of championship culture. Because having a championship DNA starts with the want. You want to have a championship DNA. That's what you want. So, It'll be very, very interesting from that perspective. But this is a good team. I think we all can agree this Detroit Lions team is going to be a team that's going to be a force to be reckoned with. But man, having a guy like DJ Reader just saying that he wants to go to a Super Bowl, he'll do anything to do it. Just great to see, man. Like I hope that DJ Reader gets that ring. I hope that we get to see him get that ring because obviously, us being Detroit Lions fans, we haven't seen much in the past couple of years in terms of going to a Super Bowl. We haven't even gone to a Super Bowl, so it'd be great to go to a Super Bowl and win it outright. So, just you love seeing it, man. You totally love seeing it. DJ Reader also has stuff to say about Tyleek Williams. He said, the sky is the limit for him. Reader said he sits beside me in meetings, so it's just cool to hear his answers. He doesn't talk very loud, but he knows the answers to every question. He's really, really smart. He picks up the playbook really well. Can't wait to see him moving around just to see what's going on. I watched him a little bit at Ohio State and just really impressed with his game. So it seems like DJ Reader is taking a leadership role on this team. You know, he's looking after a younger defensive tackle, a good mentor for a defensive tackle like Tyleek Williams. I look at a guy like Tyleek Williams and I look at how he played at Ohio State. A lot of people do not understand this about Ohio State. When you look at a guy like Tyleek Williams, he was not asked to be a guy who rushed the passer. He set up the rush for Jack Sawyer, for Tuliapa, the guy with like the long ass Hawaiian name at Ohio State, JT Tulabato, whatever the hell it is. Such a long name. I didn't really rehearse it that good, but he was asked to set up the pass rush for those guys. And those guys really benefited from his setup of the pass rush. Tyleek Williams is going to be a damn good player. Like, I think a lot of people, they look at the stats and they go, oh my God, he had 3 sacks. Sucks. He's not a good pass rusher. I always tell people, when you look at college football, you got to remember 2 things. One, there's a lot of schemes where the defensive tackles are not asked to rush the passer. Like Ohio State's one of them. And I think that's what really kills them against a team like Michigan. But Tyleek Williams is going to be good. He's going to be a great player, and with Hutchinson on the other side, he's going to get a lot of help in terms of him getting to the passer. He's a big body. He's able to get up the field. He's faster than he looks. You go watch him at Ohio State. Go watch some of his film against Texas. Go watch some of his film against Oregon, and you'll be very, very impressed with him. He's a very good player. I know a lot of people were pissed off at the pick that they made, but it is what it is. Tyleek Williams is going to be really, really good. All right. So I want to share with you some, well, the Dallas Stars are they're absolute, God dang, Dallas is getting rocked. But I just want to show you, this is from OTAs. The Lions posted this. This is fantastic. Watch this pass by Jared Goff. It's hold up, let me pull this up. So there's Jared Goff. Look at this pass, man. Oof. So satisfying. Good ball. Man. Great to see. Great to see the Lions back up, man. Right to Laporta. Right in the breadbasket, man. What a great pass by Jared Goff. Man, I love when they post. Obviously, the Lions are the only ones that can see the OTAs right now. But here's the full highlights. Let's see what this highlights looks like, just to get us excited. So, look, there's this is gonna be a fun time for us in terms of, Lions fans because, we're excited about where this team is going. I can't imagine us taking a step back, and, um, I remember earlier in the podcast, there was someone in the, chat. It was, let me get the name right, Danny Gonshelmer. What a name, Gonshelmer. He said, probably not with the schedule this year. And look, the schedule is tough. We went through it on the schedule breakdown. This is a schedule you're gonna be playing some guys like you're gonna be playing some tough teams. Green Bay to start out with, the Bears, the Ravens, the Browns are gonna be a tougher team than people can ask for. Bengals, Chiefs, Bucks, bye week, Minnesota. You're going to be playing the Commanders. You're going to be playing the Eagles, defending champion on Sunday Night Football. Giants. That Giants game will be a pain in the ass. I can guarantee you that they're going to be a team when the schedule came out, I said that was going to be a trap game. And the reason I said that is I think their defense is going to be really, really good. Now their offense probably isn't going to score shit because their offense. I mean, Russell Wilson, I don't know if he really has you clamoring at the knees like, oh my God, Russell Wilson's coming. Who? No, I don't think anybody's worried about that, but their defense is pretty damn good. The wild card is obviously the Steelers. You play the Steelers in week 16. Week 17 is the Minnesota Vikings on the road, and week 18 is on the road as well against the Chicago Bears. So, look, I look at the primetime games. You got week 3, week 6, week 7, week 11, week 14 is the third strength of schedule. And you look at the quarterbacks that you will be playing. You're going to be playing Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Jane Daniels, Baker Mayfield, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts. And you look at the run game, and this is why you got Tyleek Williams, you got Saquon Barkley, you got Kyron Williams, you got Josh Jacobs, and Derrick Henry. Those are some of the best backs in the NFL. So is this schedule hard? Absolutely. But in the last podcast, I said there's 17 winnable games. You're obviously not going to win all 17 games, but you can win as much as you can because 17 winnable games, there is 17 winnable games on that schedule. It's just, do you play up to snuff? Do you give yourself enough credit? That will be the major mark of where this team is going. All right. There's a comment, so let's get to that. Comment from Jason Fuller. Schedule's tough, so it should be great games coming up. Just stay healthy and win this thing. Exactly. Just stay healthy. That's what you want. But look, schedule's tough because you were the number one team last year. And you were the number one team with injuries. Like, I gotta say it again. You had 18 guys on IR. Now, I posted this on Twitter yesterday. And this should give you a broad assumption of, where your team is. Let me get to my profile. Where's my profile? I posted this on Twitter in response to a Chicago Bears fan. It was just, it was funny because he was telling me that injuries is no excuse. Well, sometimes it can be an excuse, but not in this situation. So I'm going to show this. Sorry, I'm getting used to this new setup I got here. I got a new house. It says Lions had 18 players on IR. 7 were in the front, 7 alone, minus the top corner. Minus 2 starting second string linebacker and Malcolm Rodriguez. The record for a Super Bowl winner is IR, and IR is 15, held by the Green Bay Packers in 2010. Only 2 were starters on that Packers teams. The most teams with starters on IR were the Patriots in 2003 with 4, and 2017 with the Eagles with 3. And one of them was Carson Wentz. This is the facts of the matter. So no, you're not winning the Super Bowl not healthy when you can't rush the passer because of all the bygones being bygones. The facts are in the pudding, man. Like, when you can't do what you need to do, that's the reality right there. That is the reality. So it's interesting, man. It is very, very interesting. So it is what it is. All right. As we end the podcast, I got to talk about the backup quarterback position because I think that's a major thing. Um, that is a position battle that is going to take center stage, and uh, quarterbacks coach Mark Brunell had something to say about it. It was right here. Where is it? Oh boy. Oh man. Oh man, I must have just got cut out. I don't know what the hell's going on. So in this backup quarterback, I'll read it for you. I don't have the slide. The slide somehow got lost on it, but it says uh, Mark Brunell declared that the two spot is open when he met with reporters last week. A third round pick out of Tennessee in 2023, Hooker is still the favorite for the job, though Allen has significantly more experience, having gone 7-12 in his career as a starter, including stops with 5 other teams. Hooker and Allen will split time in the line's 4 preseason games, and how they will fare will go a long way towards deciding if Jared Goff's back up this fall. Mark Brunell said, "Nothing is given to you in this league, and you've got to earn it," Brunell said. And once Hendon finds himself in a position where he's going to have to earn that second spot, and it starts now, obviously in preseason, but it's our OTAs. It's anytime we're on the field. It's all of that. And we're off to a very good start, which is good. He's getting better. Now, I am deathly afraid of the backup quarterback position. Deathly afraid of the backup quarterback position. You know, when you talk about Kyle Allen and Hendon Hooker battling for a second string spot, I don't think none of us saw Hendon Hooker having a battle in his third year. We knew that he would have a transition because, you know, obviously coming from a one-read offense at Tennessee, obviously coming off the injury, he was going to have to earn a spot. But I've always said this about Hendon Hooker. You know, he's a great player. I think he's going to be a good player as a backup quarterback, but he has to find his niche. He can't be the Hendon Hooker he was at Tennessee. Because a Hendon Hooker at Tennessee would get picked off 40 times in an NFL game. That's just the way it is. He made a lot of risky plays. He got out of it with his feet. He was more athletic than some of the guys. And in the SEC, being more athletic than the guys, that'll win you some games. But in the NFL, every defensive lineman that you're going to play is athletic. And knowing what the Lions went through last year with the defense and the defensive line and the linebackers, and having Zeke Turner as a starter and having all those guys as starters, it scares me to death what would happen if they lost Goff. Like, what would the Lions be without Goff? I don't think they'd be any good. That's for certain. But deathly afraid of where this team could be if they lose Goff. I don't have no confidence in Kyle Allen stealing the show. I don't have no confidence in Hendon Hooker. I mean, obviously Mark Brunell is making him play it out against Kyle Allen, which is an indictment itself. But I really thought Hendon Hooker would be farther along at this point in time. I didn't think he would be battling with a guy like Kyle Allen. I mean, that's just the reality. There's no one that you're going to see. You're going to be like, oh my God, I was Kyle Allen. Oh, he's a great player. Is he? Not really. So the backup quarterback position really scares the bejeebers out of me. When you look at this schedule and you say, where could you expect Kyle Allen or Hendon Hooker to win you 2 games? Where? If it had happened early in the season and you had Kyle Allen or Hendon Hooker playing against Baltimore and Cleveland, they're not winning 2 games out of there. And if, God forbid, you have to go 4, you're going to the Bengals, Chiefs, you're not winning those games. Which 4 games would you expect those guys to go 2-2? Where do you expect that? 2-2, just 2-2. It'd be tough, but maybe you say Green Bay, Dallas, LA, Pittsburgh. Those are the easiest games in a 4-game stretch. Maybe it's New York, Green Bay, Dallas, LA. I don't really think that's an easy stretch. But the reality of the situation is they're going to be going up against top level QBs in Mahomes, Burrow, Mayfield, Hurts, Jackson, Daniels, and Prescott, right? They need a backup quarterback that can be suitable to run this offense. And if, God forbid, they needed him to go 4 games, could they go 4 games against this schedule? I don't think they could. And that is a scary part about going into this year. You know, everyone always hopes that the quarterbacks are going to stay healthy. You always hope that your quarterback is going to stay healthy. But year after year, injuries happen to the quarterback. And it could be on some fluke play. You know, that's all it takes. But I have no confidence whatsoever in any of these guys. I loved Hendon Hooker at Tennessee. I thought he was going to be a fine player. I thought he would be already developed. Him having the battle with Kyle Allen just is lunacy to me. But it is what it is. That's just the way it's coming. And I hope that one of these guys can take the reins. I hope just one. Because as it stands right now, I don't expect any of these guys to win us 2 games in a 4-game stretch if Goff went down. I don't expect them to win 1. That's where I see this. This is the most dangerous part of the Detroit Lions team. You know, we talk about the positional battles at safety as a number 4 safety. We talk about positional battles at the guard spot where you can earn a starting spot. We talk about positional battles, you know, with the number 3 tight end. But the single-handed most important position is the backup quarterback. And the Lions, in my opinion, don't have a backup quarterback that you could really rely on. Like I'll go for it again. You have to have 4 games without Goff, right? Throughout the whole schedule, do you think you're winning 2 of those games? No, the schedule's too tough. And look, good backups are hard to come by. They just are. You know, the Baltimore Ravens usually have a good backup quarterback. The Kansas City Chiefs have Mahomes, and they usually have good backup quarterbacks. You need a good backup to back up Jared Goff because you're 1 play away from this guy getting hurt. I love Hooker. I think he could be a really good player, but damn, man, having a battle with Kyle Allen is a total indictment because I didn't like Kyle Allen with any of the stops he was at. It's just it's not a good situation for the Detroit Lions quarterback situation. All right, let's get to some. Jason says, just don't know if these backup quarterbacks are good enough. Having an awesome offense doesn't mean if they can't get the ball. And that's the thing, Jason. Like, look, you could have an awesome offense. When the team knows that you can't get the ball off, you can't throw the ball, you're in a little bit of a pickle. He says Carson Wentz. Now, I don't know why Carson Wentz is still out there. You know, you think going to the reclamation Chiefs is going to help you out. But maybe he's looking for a starting job. I don't know. But he's out there for some odd reason, and there's teams that need quarterbacks in this league, like the Saints. So I don't know why he's still out there. But I did want to play you this. So this is from Moving the Chains. And they ranked the Detroit Lions the number 1 overall. They ranked the Lions the number 1 overall team in this position. And I want to play for you this because this is we'll go into our last topic. But here is what they say about about the Detroit Lions rushing game.
There's tremendous tandem here, and there were weeks when Montgomery was out and Gibbs had to carry the mail. He only had 4 starts. 2 things about Gibbs, and he got a 12. But here's the 2 things. He only started 4 games. You already pointed out he only had 250 carries. He only played, you ready, Jim? 55% of the plays. Literally he played half of the plays. And he lands up with 1,400 yards rushing, 16 touchdowns, and 52 receptions. That's the easiest 12 I had all day. Then there's Montgomery, who basically had 14 starts, except he really didn't, because he only played like 40% of the plays, 39% of the plays. So these 2 guys combine, and they can only get the max grade, and we don't let it because it's a room award. 12 for Gibbs, 5 for Montgomery. Then you go to Reynolds. Besides being a decent player as a running back, the guy had 275 special teams plays. He gets 2 out of 2. And Vaikai, that kid, he had 310 special teams plays to go along with being the 4th running back. He gets a 1. They get a 20. They get the whole 20. First one we've had in 2 position groups, and I know enough about the next 4, for at least from my grading, we may not see another 20 as we go forward. But the top 2 backs, Gibbs and Montgomery, they had 32 touchdowns between them. And the Gibbs plays 55% of the plays. I don't even want to know what would happen if that guy played 75% of the plays.
Yeah.
At any rate, they got a 2-headed monster, and it's almost impossible to stop.
So right there, and you heard Jimmy Miller and Pat Kerwin talk about the Detroit Lions being the top running back position groups in the NFL. I love their breakdowns. Every year they do the breakdowns of rooms in the NFL, and they usually do a top 5, and that's usually means that you're a good team. By the end of it, they do a breakdown of every positional group, and they go over every positional group in the NFL. And them breaking down the Detroit Lions and the statistics that they gave you in terms of Jahmyr Gibbs playing 55% of the snaps and still had 20 touchdowns, which led the league. Montgomery, the special teams impact of Craig Reynolds, and so you own Vaki. Look, this running back room is fantastic, and they're going to be very, very good going forward too. So this is something to behold. You usually don't get a running back room like this. And this is very, very special. And any quarterback in this offense is going to do a damn good job with this offense because of the running backs that are on this team. And you look at the running backs, Jahmyr Gibbs, Dave Montgomery. I remember when we drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, people were talking about Jahmyr Gibbs being a reach. I don't think they're saying he's a reach now. He's logically, you can make a case he's better than Bijan Robinson. You can make a case he might be one of the best talents in the NFL. But it's going to be interesting to see what this Detroit Lions team does this season with a lot of the talent that they have. All right. So, looking ahead, there's going to be a lot of things happening. This will probably be the last live podcast I do for probably about a month going into July. I will do some pre-recorded podcasts. I'll post them on YouTube. I'll post them on the Facebook. That way you can go and listen to them and all that jazz. But there's going to be a condensed OTA schedule due to the early start of training camp for the Hall of Fame game. So you got the Lions will be starting earlier than usual. Obviously, we are going to be looking at upcoming preseason games probably about in a month. I mean, that's usually when the Hall of Fame game is. We're ironically not far from the Hall of Fame game. So each week we're going to break down the positional groups, and you can go back and you can listen to each one of. There'll be podcasts at Detroit Lions News Podcast, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. It'll be an interesting time for me as I become a father. So I will be, trying to figure out that and trying to figure out this whole podcast stuff in the meantime. But you can expect that there will be podcasts every week in your folder, Spotify, Apple. We're going to make a YouTube page so you can go to YouTube. We're going to put some of the podcasts on Facebook as well. It's going to be a little bit crammed, but we're gonna do what we need to do to help out Lions fans, and I love doing this, so this is great. But this will probably be the last live podcast. We're getting into the summer months, and that's usually when people get fatigued. So if you want to listen to the podcast, or you're going back in September, or in August, and you're trying to get your football fix, and you're trying to look at the positional breakdowns, we'll have them all for you on the Facebook page. Just stay tuned to that. And Twitter, Detroit Joe Chap, Detroit Joe Chap on X, Joe Chap Sports on TikTok. We'll be doing YouTube videos periodically as well, so stay tuned to that. And we will see you in the next live podcast in July by the Hall of Fame game. I'll see you guys. We'll talk about it on the next Detroit Lions podcast. Next week, we'll probably be breaking down the quarterbacks and the running backs, and that's where we'll start. There'll be like 45 minutes, half hour of the podcast, and then we'll get into it. But thank you for listening. Thank you for watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're watching this. But you can listen anytime at Detroit Lions News Podcast on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll be on more things too. So we'll see you guys in the next podcast. We talk more Detroit Lions football.